The first thing that an educated person would do when they see something like this is laugh and scroll. Because we know for fact that Cleopatra is 100% Greek Macedonian. She's 100% a white woman.
So if an educated person would laugh and scroll and instead you make a dedicated video, does that make you an educated person or an uneducated person based on your prescription?
And we can literally check her descendancy and make sure. But this is exactly what they want you to do. They want educated people to laugh and scroll because their target is not educated people. It's those who barely know anything about the ancient Egyptian history, who barely know anything about ancient Egyptians. And for that reason, we shouldn't let them get what they want. What we should do is raise awareness and educate those who don't know about the truth before they're filled with lies. This is how ancient Egyptians looked like.
Actually, this is how ancient Egyptians look like. And the funny part is the picture you're showing is Nefertiti, and this is what she looked like. Lady, why are you using Queen Cleopatra to try and depict what ancient Egyptians look like? If this debunking is about Cleopatra, debunk the Cleopatra stuff. What are you doing now? What's this? I'm going to educate people by showing you people who are not Cleopatra. This is the funny part. We all know what's going on here. In real life, she just wants to attack the ancient Egyptian idea that they were black generally. If she really wanted to prove that the Greeks weren't black because Cleopatra is Greek, then she should have said, this is what the Greeks actually look like. This is what Greek people look like, and she showed them. But then for some reason, she pivoted to Egypt. What's that got to do with anything? And this is coming from a quote-unquote educated person who said in the beginning that she should have just scrolled, which wouldn't be a bad idea given what she's doing now.
And this is how modern Egyptians look like. These are our ancestors.
I don't know how, if they were black, that would dismiss them being your ancestors anyway. I mean, you know, all people have alleged is that they got mixed in with the population and eventually became what they are today. But again, you see how hard they don't want to be related to black people. It's actually crazy. But of course, when it comes to Cleopatra, it's like, yes, we love Cleopatra. We look like Cleopatra. We are Cleopatra.
Hello guys, first of all, excuse the voices of Ms. Harati in the background. Secondly, this is going to be my first video in English on TikTok because I wanted to reach the targeted audience, which is the Afrocentric side of TikTok. I am not going to argue the whole Cleopatra documentary thing because I think a lot of people have done a great job.
I'm starting to see a trend here. It's bait with the Cleopatra documentary and then switch to the ancient Egyptians.
Every time I get introduced to a new ideology, idea, movement, whether it's a social, political, historical, cultural, whatever, the main question, maybe the only question that pops up in my mind is, what is the main goal? What do these people want? What is the end result? What is going to happen in the final episode? So
that's a good way of going about things, to completely dismiss their nuance of their explanations and thoughts and just go with what their quote-unquote main goal is. And I'm actually very curious what our main goal is. I'm sure she's going to be willing to tell us.
Let's imagine you guys have successfully claimed the ancient Egyptian civilization to be yours, and we, 110 million human beings, don't belong here. What is the next step? Are you planning on kicking us out of this country,
Are we planning on kicking them out of the country, she says. Well, let's check. There's multiple countries in Africa, and they have multiple people from multiple regions and multiple histories, and we've proven that black people were the original people of that area, did we kick out the people who live in that area who are foreigners? You know, unlike some Middle Eastern states that we know today, which are fighting over who came there first, which I will not mention, which they have a tendency to kick people out who don't look like them.
So I don't care what that woman says in that movie, but Cleopatra was never black. Cleopatra was an Egyptian Greek queen, okay? And Egypt was never black. Egypt is Egyptian. This is not Egyptian hair, okay? This is African.
Okay, so let's pull up an ancient Egyptian and compare the oh, they look exactly the same.
This is Egyptian hair. This is Egyptian hair. This is Egyptian hair.
Okay, so if this is Egyptian hair, why doesn't it match your hair? You notice how the color and the texture is very different than yours?
Okay. This is an Egyptian man and this is Egyptian hair.
She has to be trolling. There's no way in hell that she thinks she looks more similar to the ancient Egyptians that she showed than this dude who actually looks kind of lighter skinned than the Egyptian man that she's shown. Look at this skin color. Something doesn't match.
Hola. This is how the ancient Egyptians looked like in ancient.
Once again, this is how the ancient Egyptians really look like if you don't use just one statue that looks like what you want it to look like.
This is how the ancient Greeks looked like in the ancient time also. And this is the African style.
Okay, so let's compare the African style to the ancient Egyptian style. That's Queen Kemsit, one of the earliest queens of ancient Egypt.
So there is a huge difference in the facial features. And about the skin color, usually they presented all of men in a reddish color because all of men usually work under the sun, and all of women usually presented as this color. It's between a white and yellow because all of women usually sit at home.
The idea that ancient Egyptian women sat at home and didn't go to work and didn't go outside and didn't have jobs is a myth made up to fit this yellow color thing. As you can see, I've presented many statues and many paintings that show that ancient Egyptian women were not yellow. But worse than that is, even women who are shown working the fields and working are sometimes depicted as yellow. Hello? The yellow skin is not necessarily a realistic representation, and the brown skin is all over the place as well. But they will dismiss this, they will look away from this, and notice how the men are never depicted as yellow, even the kings.
Also in ancient Egypt, any color have a symbolism, like the green color, it's a symbol of eternity and fertility. And also the black color, symbol of eternity and fertility. So, Habibi, be proud of your history.
When it comes to the hair of the ancient Egyptians, you get the same old excuses. No, these are wigs. No, these are just a certain way because of this. No, their hair actually might have been different colors, but they depicted it as black because that was the simplest color. Now, these are not solutions. These are solutions looking for problems rather than problems looking for solutions. And the reason why I say this is because on every count, every dot, every trace, they will dismiss the art of the ancient Egyptians. So I'll give you one example. So the hair of the ancient Egyptians, you know, some people will say, oh, yeah, the hair is, you know, a wig. They're wearing wigs. Maybe this is true for the nobles, and it's probably true for, you know, the queens and stuff. You know, women do that a lot, but it's definitely not true for workers. You don't get into a pyramid or build a pyramid with a wig on. Like, that's stupid. You don't go to work, hey guys, everyone get your wigs on. We're going to climb buildings and make, you know, do extensive labor. That's not how things work. The second thing is, we see children's hair depicted in ancient Egypt, and it has the same coarseness that these Nubian wigs have. The wigs that they say they have, and those on wigs, they don't even have the structure to be a wig. They're like come out of one part of the hair, and they seem to mimic dreadlocks or braided hair. Now, again, the hair problem in ancient Egypt is it's not a problem really, but the hair problem in ancient Egypt has to do with the fact that they don't look like what you would want them to look like if they were Middle Easterners. So when it gets down to it, they go, oh, they just braided their hair, right? This is just Middle Eastern hair that's braided when it comes to the kids. But then when it comes to the adults, it's not the same hair, but braided. Now, all of a sudden, it's wigs. How did it switch? If they could braid their hair, why, and it looks the same as these Nubian wigs in its form, why then switch? Why don't just braid your hair? And then, of course, then they go into crazy, crazy, crazy town with solutions like, you know, everybody shave their hair. I've heard some people actually say that everybody shave their hair because of lice. Well, clearly they didn't, because we see people who haven't shaved their hair. Some people shave their hair because of lice, and it probably was a problem, but not for everybody. Not to mention that when we look deep into the ancient Egyptian mummies, there are some people whose hair is still attached to the head, meaning that not everybody cut their hair. Some people don't have wigs on; they have their hair, and these are mummies. These are the elites. Now, keep in mind that this is only one argument, and here's the thing. Everything that happens in ancient Egypt, as you've seen over the last videos that I've shown you, is whenever something's vague, it's always assumed to be Middle Eastern or European sometimes. And then they go, yeah, it's definitely Middle Eastern, but, you know, Africans might have played a little bit of a role. And it's true on every account, Like, for example, the skin color that we've discussed before. When they see brown, dark skin, they go, oh, it's just a tan. When they see Nubian hair, oh, it's just a wig. When they see broad noses, oh, you know, they just depicted it wrong. When they see full lips, well, you know, sometimes Middle Easterners get full lips. When they see that they're in Africa, oh, but, you know, anyone can live anywhere they want. Anything they see anywhere at any time is always evidence for the opposite. It's never evident. Nothing is ever what it seems, apparently. Almost everything is always just some kind of divergent point. Except when it comes to the skin color. When the skin color matches what they want it to match, like, for example, the yellowy skin of the ancient Egyptians, then it's like, yes, that's the right hair. That's the right skin color. That's definitely the right skin color. When the ancient Egyptians depict Asiatics as different than themselves, they go, well, they want to differentiate themselves, but when they depict warriors as from the Asiatics as lighter than their woman, then they go, well, some of these people, it's like, okay, but it's a warrior. Wouldn't he be tanned? And he's walking around without a shirt on in a desert, and they live in the Middle East, which is one of the most deserty areas. It's hot as hell. So why aren't they tan? And then, of course, there's, way more than this, which is their connection to Nubia, which, by the way, they're good at this one. This is my favorite argument. Yes, there were Nubians right in the beginning of ancient Egypt. No, they didn't play any role at all in their development. Any DNA that is black DNA is a trace DNA in their opinion. It's, you can find it in North Africans. It's like, yeah, you can, because North Africans are part black. A lot of them are. Even your own DNA studies say this. But they go, no. It's like, you did DNA studies that show that there was more DNA, black DNA, the one that you've confirmed is black DNA, in ancient, prehistoric North Africans than any North African today. But again, it's, well, the part that comes across as if it could be Middle Eastern DNA, they go, yes, that's definitely Middle Eastern DNA. It reflects the population 100% accurately. It's true. It works, and it's real DNA, and that's the population, and that's how the population looked. Now, if you know anything about populations and how they look, that the amount of DNA, the black DNA, the reason why they dismiss it is because if you had something like 36% of your DNA being black, you kind of look like a black guy. That's just a fact. Like 1/3 of your DNA is black, you're probably going to look like a black guy. And some of these were ranging to like 50%. But, of course, they have to explain that away. And again, I don't even agree that the rest of the DNA wasn't black African, because a lot of this DNA comes from way long ago where, did white people even exist at this time? Did people actually look like that? And also, have they found the DNA that would show, because there's DNA for blonde hair and all this other stuff, and have they shown that yet? The funny part is they know for a fact about the migrations into North Africa. They know the fact about all of this stuff, but they keep dismissing it. They go, no, it's still the same population as they used to be. That is impossible. Even if you said that the ancient Egyptians were white or they were Middle Eastern, it is impossible that region is still populated by the exact same people that they were in the beginning, which comes to the point that a lot of people made about ancient Egypt, which is foundationally they would have been black because they just look black. The earliest ones look black as hell. Eventually, some people from other parts of the world join in. We know this is true because we see some of their artifacts, we see some of their inventions, we see some of their history they're written about, some foreigners come in, we see it. And so we are not surprised if there's foreign DNA in trace amounts or anything like that. But to dismiss the black DNA altogether, to dismiss the culture that is exactly the same, what you are doing is you're basically saying, we don't want the ancient Egyptians to be black. And I can understand why, obviously. Like, okay, so that's the what they're doing. What would be the reason? The reason is because if ancient Egypt has anything to do with black people. This is why, okay, let's do one more thing. Let's do one more thing about the DNA. So they don't even want to give like a slight piece of DNA. So like the 2017 study, right, that they did, that they say had majority Middle Eastern DNA, but then trace amounts of black DNA, about 6 to 13%. The reason why those articles were like, oh, they're 100% Middle Eastern, and they ignore their own data that says there's 6 to 13%, is because they don't want to give even the slightest amount of credit to black people. They don't even want to say there are some black people in ancient Egypt. If they could wish them away, they would. And in fact, they did in the past. Like in the past, they used to say that Ethiopians were white. Because Ethiopians had an ancient civilization, they were white. They try and push away anything that has to do with that. History, technology, all of this, DNA has dismissed all these claims, but believe it or not, the motivations are still there.